Marshall, Southern Miss, and the Ragin Cajuns sweep the week. It's Locked On Sunbelt.
You are Locked On Sunbelt, your daily podcast on the Sunbelt Conference, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to another edition of Locked On Sunbelt. I'm your host, Dave Schultz. Hopefully everybody had a great weekend. Today's edition of Locked On Sunbelt is brought to you by LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnCollege. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnCollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. All right, before we get into this weekend's action, please subscribe to the channel. It is a big help. We seem to be growing at least a little bit, and that is because of the people watching. So we do appreciate it. We'll continue with basketball. We're going to try and get some more football. They are still, coaches that is, they are still recruiting, as we do have a signing day in about 10 days. So we'll see who we can get. But we're going to see if we can get some basketball coaches as well. But the more it grows, the more guests we can get. So please subscribe to the channel. It is sincerely appreciated. YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. Both of them would be great. If you want to rate and review in Apple Podcast and in YouTube, that would be fantastic and sincerely appreciated as well. All right, great weekend of college basketball. Again, we had a couple of overtime ball games on Saturday. And some close matchups, although Marshall won again, Southern Miss won again, and the Cajuns, all of a sudden the Cajuns have won 6 in a row. They lost their first 2 ball games of the Sun Belt Conference, and now they have reeled off 6 straight. I believe 4 of those have been on the road, so that is impressive. Let's start off with Marshall. They had a big win against Texas State on Thursday. And then they were taking on Arkansas State, who's 9-12. They're 1-7 or 9, and they were 9-11, and 1-6 in the conference. But now they lost. Marshall needing overtime, 87-78, as Arkansas State comes all the way back to force overtime. Marshall dominated overtime, but Arkansas State gets a steal with 10 seconds left to go in the ball game, and they end up tying the game and forcing overtime. I believe Caleb Fields, he didn't turn the ball over, or he got the layup. Someone else forced the turnover, and Caleb Fields got the layup to force overtime. But all Marshall in the overtime as they continue to Marshall, again, 21 losses last year, not quite as good as Southern Miss. Turnaround, but really impressive. Andrew Taylor taking the lead in this one. He had 27 points, and Tavian Kinsey had 23. They shot a combined, how about this, 19 for 35. That'll work. 19 for 35. They had a combined 2 turnovers between the 2 of them. So they lead Marshall to their 17th victory. They are 17-4, 6-2 in the conference. They are tied at the top. Arkansas State, continues to struggle. They, like I said, mentioned, they were 1-7 in the Sun Belt. Their only win was at Old Dominion. Ironically enough, they beat Little Rock, but they're not in the conference anymore. They've lost to ULM. Lost to South Alabama, lost to Troy, lost to Texas State, only by 3. They lost to Southern Miss, they lost to the Cajuns, and they lost to Marshall, although they have given some teams some good challenges. They are struggling right towards the bottom of the standings. They are the bottom of the standings, 1 slot right below South Alabama. All right, Southern Miss with a nice win. They win the weekend as well. Southern Miss, they have won 3 in a row and 4 out of 5. They beat James Madison 83 to 70. Appears that they were in control from the get-go, led 43-36. Pinckney had 28 points. DeAndre Pinckney, he led the way with 28 points. Crowley only had 14. He did not shoot it very much, only 5 of 6. Pinckney had the hot hand. And I think the one thing they're talking about in this ball game is the crowds that are starting to show up in Reed Green Coliseum. They are, it's like the largest, like 4,000 or 5,000 people showing up. It holds 8,000 or almost 81, but they are getting some big crowds, and it is making a big difference. Southern Miss with a win over South Alabama earlier in the week, but they had to hold on to win that ball game. So they have turned it around as well. As we mentioned, Marshall with 21 losses last year. Southern Miss, I believe this is right, 26 losses last year. 26. They were 7-26, 1-17 in the Conference USA. They are atop the standings with Marshall and the Cajuns. They, along with Marshall, each have 17 wins. The Cajuns, which we will get to here momentarily, have 16 wins, but all three of those teams are 6-2. Should mention, and we'll get to them in the next segment, ULM did lose, so they dropped to 5-3. All right, let's take a timeout. We'll come back and talk more. Ragin Cajuns, South Alabama, another valiant effort. I think they went to overtime as well and could not pull it out against Coastal Carolina. Let me tell you about LinkedIn Jobs. As a small business owner or hiring manager, you know that success in 2023 all depends on the team members you surround yourself with. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. With LinkedIn Jobs, you can hire qualified candidates more efficiently by matching open roles with people who have the skills, values, and experiences to help you achieve your goals. LinkedIn Jobs helps you quickly attract qualified candidates to your open jobs with targeting tools. It identifies the most qualified candidates on LinkedIn Jobs and connects with them fast and for free. LinkedIn Jobs makes it easy to screen and rate applicants based on your job qualifications, all on one platform. It's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs #1 in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. The Ragin Cajuns win their 6th in a row. They also had a little bit of trouble with the very pesky Texas State Bobcats. They are a tough team to handle no matter what. You're going to play their style of play, although Texas State put up a bunch of points against Marshall earlier in the week. The Cajuns slipped by Texas State 60-51 against, again, the Cajuns, scored only 60 points. What did they just score? They have trouble earlier in the week as well. I mean, they slid past South Alabama a couple weeks ago, but that was 79-76 in Mobile. They put up 80 against Arkansas State, and they only scored 60 versus Texas State. Again, Texas State, so difficult to play against. Let's see if Mason Harrell played. Remember, he did not play in the second half against Marshall, and they almost beat him. Texas State was right there tied at 68. And it was all Marshall down the stretch. Let's see here for Texas State. No Mason Harrell again. He is out. You had Jordan Mason with a 19 lead. Texas State, another valiant effort from Texas State without their leading scorer. Meanwhile, Greg Williams ends up leading the Ragin Cajuns with 22 points. And Jordan Brown continues his assault on player of the year potential, 19 points and 9 rebounds, as the Cajuns again started off a little bit odd, going 0-2 on the road, a couple of games that they probably should have won. They had Coastal beat and then kind of gave that one away and never really did catch up to Old Dominion. But since then, they've beaten Southern Miss, they've beaten Georgia State, they've beaten Monroe, they've beaten South Alabama, they've beaten Arkansas State, Texas State. I'd say out of all those teams, obviously Southern Miss is the best. So they have not beaten the top teams in the conference so far outside of Southern Miss. We'll see what happens, depending on who you think the top teams in the conference are. They did take down Monroe, so they did beat Monroe, and that's a big ball game. A little bit more of a rivalry in basketball than it is in football. Meanwhile, South Alabama struggles again. They have a real difficult time for whatever reason starting the ball games. They had a real difficult time starting off against Southern Miss. They had a real difficult time starting off actually against the Cajuns. I think they were within the Cajuns. They played the Cajuns well all game long, but they had a real difficult time starting off against Southern Miss and all kinds of issues with Coastal Carolina. They were down 17-4 to Coastal Carolina, and they end up forcing overtime. And first time this year, we've seen a team deliberately foul Kevin Samuel. I think they were up by 1, and Coastal Carolina forced the Jaguars to the free throw line, and Kevin Samuel missed the front end of the one-on-one, and that was basically all she wrote. Again, you got to give the Jaguars credit for coming back. They were down, I think, 16 points at one point in time, and they played so much better in the second half. They got off to a slow, should be mentioned, they got off to a slow start again in the second half, but you want to hear about a turnaround? They had 9 turnovers in the first half, no turnovers in the second half. I'm not even sure if they had a turnover in overtime. So for the first 20 minutes, they had 9 turnovers and only 10 field goals. In the second half and overtime, they had no turnovers. That's impressive. Turbo Jones, he went off. He had 25 points, the Auburn transfer, 6 3-pointers. Boy, someone goes 6 for 13 from 3. You're usually going to win that basketball game. Isaiah Moore with 19 points. He actually hit 3 3-pointers. I'm going to guess that is a season high. He does not like shooting 3-pointers at all. In fact, 1, 2, not only is it a season high, it's more than he had all year. He only had made 2 3-pointers. 3-pointers aren't his ballgame. He's the team's leading scorer, and oddly enough, in today's day and age, he does not make or take very many 3-pointers, but he made 3 the other day, and the Jaguars with a 40-point second half force overtime, and it went back and forth. Turbo Jones at one point in time had 9 straight points for the Jaguars. He hit 2 threes and got an and one, but Coastal was just too much. We talked to Isam Mostafa, the Egyptian transplant at Sunbelt Media Day, and he was fantastic. Finishes 8 for 16, but he started off 7 for 7. So a little bit of adjustment was made there. Still had 19 points and 13 rebounds, but it was the English transplant, Josh Udije from London, England, had 33 points, and at one point it just didn't seem like he could miss. 13 out of 21, 3 of 5 from 3, 4 of 4 from the free throw line. That's another place where the Jags not only struggle to make free throws, they struggle to get to the line. The Jaguars were 3 of 7 overall, and I think 0 of 3 in the second half from the free throw line, whereas Coastal Carolina was 12 of 15 in the ball game. So that's the ball game right there. I'm not complaining about the refs. I'm just saying that's kind of the game that South Alabama plays. They shoot up these floaters, and when Kevin Samuel makes a move, it's very odd. He does not get fouled very often. I would foul him more often than they do, but he had another double-double, 6 out of 9, but 0 of 4 from the free throw line, 10 rebounds. He finished with 12 points and the 10 boards. South Alabama falls to 8 and 12. They drop to 2 and 6. I think they're coming home because they're going out of town for the Senior Bowl. No, they're out of town. Oh, no, they are. They get Old Dominion this week and Troy at home, and then 3 games on the road, Arkansas State, Monroe, and Troy. So it looks like it's going to be a long season for the South Alabama Jaguars, unfortunately. that seems to be the case. All right, let's take one more timeout. We'll run through the rest of Saturday's action in the Sun Belt. We'll be back right after this. You're listening to Locked On Sun Belt, your team every day. Welcome back. I'm your host, Dave Schultz. This is Locked On Sun Belt, your team every day. Again, I urge you, I'm pleading, if not begging, to subscribe to the channel. We are seeming to grow. We're getting more views, and I appreciate that. So that's coming from you guys. Again, I only have so many relatives that can subscribe to the channel. So it can't be all them, although it could be some of them. All right, let's run down the rest of the Sun Belt from a Saturday. Let's see if we can find it here a little bit quicker than what is going on right now. Apparently not. But again, we had a couple more games that went to OT. Marshall needed OT. Coastal Carolina needed OT. Not going as quickly as I would have liked. All right. All right, Coastal Carolina over South Alabama, 85-81. That was in overtime. Marshall beat Arkansas State 87-78. We mentioned that. Southern Miss beats James Madison 83-70. They're starting to draw some big crowds in Hattiesburg. Good for them. Georgia Southern with a win, 58-52. Georgia State seems to be a little bit, they win at home and can't win on the road. I don't think they have a win on the road this year, maybe just one. Georgia Southern, now 5-3 in the Sun Belt. They're tied for second in the Sun Belt, 12-9 overall. Troy cools off Monroe, 77-53. I got a feeling, has Troy won like 5 out of 6, something along those lines? Well, actually, they lost a couple in a row. So they won 5 out of 7, losing to App State and James Madison before beating Monroe. That's a nice win for Scott Cross and the boys. Plus, what it does is it ties the Warhawks in the conference, and that could come back for seeding later on. So that's a big ball game for Troy to win. Troy had 3 players in double figures. Muhammad, Eugene, and Williams all scored in double figures. Monroe had Howell and Blackman had 14 and 11 points, respectively. Trojans 13-8, 5-3 in the conference. Warhawks 9-12, 5-3 in the conference. And App State goes into Norfolk and takes down Old Dominion 72-58. Harcum had 28 points, 7 rebounds for App State. App improves to 11-10, 4-4 in the Sun Belt. Old Dominion drops to 11-9, 3-5 in the Sun Belt. All right, so quickly going over the standings, or not. All right, Marshall, Southern Miss, and the Cajuns all 6-2. Overall record doesn't really matter. Although Marshall and Southern Miss both have 17 wins, Cajuns have 16 wins. Troy is a 1 game back. Troy, Georgia Southern, and ULM all 5-3. They're 1 game back. James Madison, Coastal, and App all 2 games back. They're 4-4. Old Dominion, Texas State are 3 games back. They're 3-5. Georgia State and South Alabama 2-6. And they're 4 games back, and Arkansas State is 5 back. All right, so let me quickly. So it was who's coming into town for South Alabama? Maybe they could get a couple of wins here. Old Dominion and Troy. Troy is going to be very difficult next Saturday coming into the Mitchell Center. Let's see if they can get a win on Thursday against Old Dominion before they take off when the Senior Bowl comes in town. The basketball team takes off. You don't want to compete against each other when you're doing those types of things. All right, so we will continue to highlight basketball, and if we get more news in the portal's kind of closed down, right? No one can go into the portal, and if you are coming out of the portal, are you going to be part of spring practice? So you can get out of the portal, you can commit to another school, but you may not be able to show up there until after the spring semester. So we will keep an eye on that as well. Also, again, we're going to try and get some basketball coaches on and have some, as they say, interviews in the can for the Senior Bowl week. That's going to be a busy week for me with the radio station, but we still want to do the podcast. It'd be nice to have things already done and raring to go during that week. It is signing day that week on Wednesday. Not in a couple of days, but next Wednesday is National Signing Day. So we will have shows about that as well. All right. Once again, thank you very much for tuning in to Locked On Sunbelt, your team every day. Please subscribe. It is a big help. I'm your host, Dave Schultz, and we'll talk to you again on Tuesday. Thanks so much.